From the studios of the Department of Communication in Phillipsburg, welcome to Next Level Thinking. Here are your hosts, Team APAP. Say Martin.
Hello and welcome to Next Level Thinking with your psychologist from APAP SXM. My name is Stephanie Hassett and I'm here together with
Joyce
Carmencita.
This program has been made possible by the Ministry of Public Health and DCOM. This program highlights topics that help deal with the subject that matters the most, ourselves. Today, we're going to talk about a more serious topic, mental illness, also called mental disorder or psychiatric disorder. We all have our days that we are just not mentally feeling all that well. We might just be emotionally drained from a long and stressful day, or just waking up on the wrong side of the bed, or just feeling sad and down. A mental disorder, however, is feeling sad and down every single day for a longer period of time. So sad, so down, that we do not feel like doing anything, not even getting out of bed and taking a shower. Mental disorders are usually defined by a combination of how a person thinks, feels, perceives, or behaves, and causes significant distress or impairment of personal functioning. The behaviors, feelings, or thoughts are so dominant that a person is not able to function properly at work, or not able to take proper care of their children, or to tend to their household. Before we go deeper into this topic, let me start by stating that a mental illness does not make you crazy. Having a mental illness is just as serious as having a physical illness and deserves the same amount of attention. Carmencita, why do you think that people see mental illness as being crazy?
Well, a lot of people have strange ideas about what crazy is. They usually think that a crazy person is out of control and dangerous, and that they are ashamed and afraid about what others might think. But as you mentioned, a person with a mental health problem can also withdraw and isolate himself. So, if somebody in the family is not acting in their normal way emotionally, is worth paying attention. Also, a lot of people think that when they express how they feel mentally, for instance, I'm sad or tired or lonely, that they are showing weakness.
Oh, I hear that a lot as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's seen as a sign of weakness. We can't show them that we're not feeling all that well today.
No, because I have to be also always strong and what people will say if I start crying. And, even in our raising of our children, sometimes boys are not allowed to cry. They say, stop crying.
True.
You're like a girl.
Yes.
Huh?
At first you said, okay, it's not just the acting out, right? That's not just mental illnesses. You also have the people who are more withdrawn and isolate themselves and are not the ones who's showing this externalizing behavior that's showing it outwards, being loud and aggressive. Mm-hmm. To mention the term, the illness that I guess we're talking about, or which is one of the illnesses that we can see this in, is schizophrenia. But not everyone has schizophrenia. These people lose sight of reality, and not everyone has that. We have some people who know where they are, who know who they are, but are just in such a bad state mentally, feel extremely sad, that they isolate themselves or they withdraw themselves.
Because of out of cause, right?
Exactly.
Like traumatic events, or is it also the people who I see walking around, wandering in the streets, or sometimes I get a lot of asking about that. Are they crazy? What are they doing over there?
Right. And those are the people that, often are people who have a mental illness and have lost their sight on reality. They are unable to distinguish reality from fantasy. And they lose that sight, and you see them out in the streets talking to themselves. We can make sense out of it. But that is not the only mental illness. And I know that's one that we see the most.
Yeah. But Stephanie, there are also other people out there acting out and talking to themselves and
I talk to myself.
Yeah,
I do sometimes.
Sometimes you see people talking to themselves, but they're talking on their phone. You're just not seeing them.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay. But there are also people there who are using drugs, and they also could misbehave, do acting out behavior, or people who are, drunk,
Right.
abuse of alcohol.
Right. So it's that they're under the influence of a substance, of something that they are acting out, but they are not necessarily mentally ill.
No.
However, to add to that, drug abuse and alcohol abuse can also be a mental illness.
Yes, can be.
If it goes beyond a certain
state or
constant
state,
use of alcohol and drugs, you do get some kind of mental.
Exactly.
And you need treatment as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Yeah. And Carmencita, you also just said that people feel embarrassed or feel ashamed, right? And they can't really express themselves. You mentioned an upbringing that we tell our young boys to not cry and to not show emotions because that's girlish or not appropriate. However, I can imagine suppressing those feelings and walking around with those feelings and not learning how to properly express yourself and channel those emotions make it very difficult.
And it's not only the crying, because if you're not allowed to express, because anger or pain or sadness, those are very strong emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not allowed to express them because you're silly or you're girly or what you have been told.
Mm-hmm.
Grow up and be a big person, and that's not the way to behave. Then you also doesn't learn to express other emotions.
Right.
So the expressions of emotion becomes a kind of a taboo. I keep everything to myself. I solve everything myself because then I'm the strong one. I'm not bothering anybody.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess it doesn't have to lead to a mental illness, but it can if you don't properly learn how to deal with emotions, and especially strong and big emotions. It can result into something or develop into a difficulty later on in life. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mental illness, but it's not beneficial for your child's development to tell them to hold back on their emotions. And also, I guess, maybe we see these people out on the streets because they're afraid to come in and ask for help. Because as you said, Carmencita, what will others think about me? So we're kind of also stopping other people from getting the help that they need and deserve by putting out this judgment of them, by calling them crazy.
Yeah, they'll be afraid to come up and ask for help and another thing, sometimes they don't know where to go to ask for help, because it has not been taught. Like, if you're feeling a physical illness, if you have a cold or, stomachache or something, you have to go to your doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But if you upset and your head is full of thoughts and you feeling lonely and think, where do you think you will have to go to help?
Exactly.
And who's going to help you?
Exactly. And we have actually people who studied the brain, right? And who study thoughts and feelings and stuff. Those are psychologists.
Yes.
But it's such a scary thing for people to go to a person that, sometimes people think, will read our minds, right? But that's not what is happening. And I also think that people are just not aware of the different mental illnesses. There are some people with mental illnesses, as we said, that lost the sense of reality. But there are also some that their mood is affected or their emotion regulation, so how they deal with difficulties is affected. There are just so many more different disorders. But after the break, we'll go into that a little bit more. Stay tuned.
Next Level Thinking. To access all St. Martin Gov programming, visit the official government website at www.stmartingov.org.
Hey! Prevention is the cure. Help us, we help you. Stop disease from spreading because of mosquito. I got a message for you. Say what? Please listen carefully. Listen. You can do your part to stop mosquitoes from biting me. What? Get rid of all containers. Get rid of them with water in them. Hey. Don't give mosquitoes no chance to lay eggs in them. Cause we don't want no disease. We don't want dengue. We don't want punya. We don't want Zika. No. No. Hey. No. No. Prevention is the cure. What? Help us, we help you. Stop disease from spreading. Stop it. Because of mosquito.
This is by King Voss. This message was brought to you by the Collective Prevention Services. Remember, do your part and stop disease from spreading.
Because of mosquito.
It's important to know more, now than ever, what employment opportunities are available. Get a head start on the competition at jobopportunity.sx by ensuring that your experience, achievements, and professional aspirations are viewed by the island's employers. Create your profile, display your skills, and be informed on what jobs are available with just-in-time updates at the tip of your fingers. For more info, call 520-5279 and register now at jobopportunity.sx.
Hi, what's up, St. Martin? My name is Rene Leverett, and I play baseball. And I've represented St. Martin in numerous international tournaments and professionally around the world. Sports matters to me because it reveals and develops character. So I challenge the business community to step up for sports and help us rebuild and repair our facilities. I also ask the community to nominate local businesses in your area to take the challenge and step up for sports. Because hashtag sports matters, hashtag are you in?
It's hard to make big changes in life. The energy, time, and commitment are often too great. That's why many men in our community struggle with their health. The Department of Collective Prevention Services is encouraging all men in our community to take the positive step and get checked. Schedule your annual medical screening, practice a healthy lifestyle by eating healthy, exercise regularly, and practice safe sex consistently. This message is brought to you by Collective Prevention Services, a department of the Ministry of Health.
You are listening to Next Level Thinking on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9.
Welcome back to Next Level Thinking. Just now in the first segment, we discussed mental illness. Unfortunately, a lot of people define mental illness as being crazy, and that is so not the case. And we're trying to make that clear to all of your listeners today. There are so many different mental illnesses. Unfortunately, the ones we mostly see are the people outside on the street who lost touch with reality. But that is not the only mental illness there is. There are tons that we might not all understand. There are disorders that might not affect you in such a great manner, but do affect your personal life, like a mood disorder where you have difficulties getting up and out of bed and feeling good about yourself and having a low self-esteem. So there are so many different ones, and we want to talk a little bit more about those different types of disorders in this segment. Joyce, can you tell us a little bit more about the different mental disorders?
So let's look at the most common disorders. There are disorders that are developed at a later age and triggered by various reasons, and start mostly with feelings of shame, low self-esteem, and insecurity, or after a traumatic event. As is often the case with an eating disorder. In eating disorders, people think that is about losing weight, but the problem is much deeper. For example, anorexia nervosa. With anorexia, weight loss can give a strong and secure feeling for a while. So underlying emotions are not felt, such as insecurity and low self-image. By controlling weight loss, people try to regain the control of their lives in most cases. And so they end up vicious circle.
One of the disorders is anorexia nervosa, where people are so focused on their appearance and on their eating habits that they use it as a way to control certain things in their lives. They have a feeling that they have no control
about their normal lives.
Lives, right? So
yes.
You're telling me, so they use food to control?
Right, but it's a combination.
Okay.
You have a low self-esteem as well. So you look at the mirror, you think you're fat, and you're not doing well in life because you are fat. Mm-hmm. And that's where they're starting losing weight. And when they get good results of that, they're just going to get more of those results they have in control of not eating.
Wow, that's I don't think that's a very common one, in the sense that people know it a lot here.
No,
right?
I don't think so. Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think here in St. Martin, people are also very busy with food, and it's, the thought that pops into mind for me is, with this healthy lifestyle nowadays, everyone wanting to be healthy and watching their weight. Is that also a disorder? Are we calling that anorexia then?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But yeah, it starts already with the images you see on the television. For young children, young girls, for example, it's really a big problem that they are seeing how thin you have to be. And that's their model. That's their example. And then images get stuck in their mind and they want to live to that. But yeah, it's really a danger underneath that if you having other problems already or not feeling well or insecure, you are developing some disorder.
Can they control it? Can they control the urge to control not eating?
Well, if they're having anorexia nervosa, they can. So it's very difficult to break through that circle.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to get treatment. If you are already at that point, you cannot return. But yeah, if you find it in a very early state, most of the time they are hitting their losing weight problems.
Okay. They're actually hiding it, so they wouldn't show it.
Yeah, well, you see it in the first stage. You can see they are talking about losing weight and they are seeing pictures and they're showing off and that kind of things. But after that, for a while, they try to hide it because people are reacting negative about it, and they are talking about, hey, you're losing too much weight, and then they are going to hide that they are losing weight.
Right. So that's where they enter a state of knowing, actually, I guess, that it's wrong, or maybe not for themselves.
Yes.
But they realize others think it's wrong.
Yes, it's addicted that you are losing weight, so you try to hide it because you're getting a good feeling about it, that you are doing that. But your surroundings are being negative about it. So you're trying to get yourself up in that whole world of yours and eventually becoming more isolated.
Right. And I guess that's kind of what a mental disorder often does. In this case, it's anorexia, but it tends to isolate people. It tends to take you out of your social circle because you're different or your thinking style is different. Your behavior is so different and so opposing from the people around you that you tend to get isolated.
True. You're not fitting in a normal picture anymore. And your problems are most of the time bigger than you can oversee. So yeah, you're trying to resolve it yourself.
Right. Can you tell us about some other disorders?
Yes, I can. You have other disorders, of course, addiction or obsessive compulsive disorder and sleeping disorders.
Okay.
But those are not necessarily the one you're born with. You have also disorders you're born with.
Okay. So you're telling me you have disorders that you're born with, and you have disorders that you are not born with?
Yeah, they developed on a later age.
They follow up on a later age. Yes. Understood. And so which disorders can you be born with?
Well, for example, most familiar with the terms ADHD and ODD, we hear that terms a lot.
Yeah, those are children that are usually very active, overactive and restless. But the main thing with a child with ADHD is that lack of concentration.
Okay.
Is that the way it is, Joyce?
Yeah, that is typically for a child or a young adult with ADHD. You can see that very often. And also with ODD, there are children who are rebellious, cross, and angry. They have a lot of trouble to control their emotions, and therefore they get temperature tantrums. They often run into all kinds of problems at school and at home in social situations. But those disorders are also quickly labeled. If someone is hyperactive or cannot concentrate or showing bad behavior, it's not necessary that you have that kind of disorder.
Yeah, I think sometimes with those people who are overactive or not listening or lack of attention, especially with children, parents or people around them tend to call them rude, naughty, and not listening and things like that. And it's worth mentioning that it's happening in the brain, so the child has no control.
Right. So we have different types of disorders, if I'm correct. We have the disorders that you're born with. We have the disorders that develop later on in life, which can be various disorders. We have mood disorders, personality disorders, developmental disorders, which, as we were saying, you're born with. And what I often notice is often when a disorder is first diagnosed and the person is in a state in their life where they cannot function the way they used to, right? They either cannot So if they're born with it, we notice that growing up, they cannot function normally in school. They cannot concentrate. However, when it develops over life, we notice that before they were able to be active and go out and meet friends. And then all of a sudden they start withdrawing more and more. However, often with treatment, they can manage to live with a diagnosis, because getting one of these mental disorders doesn't mean it's the end. Right? I guess it's the same. No, it's not. It's the same as when you break your ankle, for example, you go to a doctor, you get your ankle fixed, and you continue from that. However, it will always be a weaker spot in your body, that broken ankle, right? And the same goes for a mental disorder. Some you can overcome in a way, some you have for life, but treatment helps you manage it. However, it will always be a weak spot that you need to take extra care of and put some more attention in. After the break, we'll talk a little bit more about the experience of what it is to live with a mental disorder. Stay tuned.
Next Level Thinking.
It's important to know more, now than ever, what employment opportunities are available. Get a head start on the competition at jobopportunity.sx by ensuring that your experience, achievements, and professional aspirations are viewed by the island's employers. Create your profile, display your skills, and be informed on what jobs are available with just-in-time updates at the tip of your fingers. For more info, call 520-5279 and register now at jobopportunity.sx.
You are listening to Next Level Thinking on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9.
Welcome back, listeners, to Next Level Thinking. I'm your host, Stephanie Hassett, and I'm here with Carmencita Chamont, a psychologist, and Joyce Bregonje, who works in the field of child development. For those who are just joining in, we've been discussing mental illness. We've learned that someone can be diagnosed with a mental disorder when their thoughts, behaviors, feelings, and our perception can cause significant distress to their lives, and gets in the way of their daily functioning. Now, when diagnosed, though, this does not mean the end. You can get treatment. You can get help. You don't have to suffer in silence. What we see a lot is that people who are diagnosed tend to, either due to their diagnosis or because they're depressed, withdrawing themselves and isolating themselves, but also because of getting the diagnosis, getting the label, isolating themselves because they fear, the rejection of others or the judgment of others. And this, of course, does not have to be the case. Getting treatment can help you manage your diagnosis and sometimes overcome it. However, it will always be a weak spot, as I explained before the break. It's like breaking your ankle. Even though you get it, you go to the doctor and you get it healed, it will always be a weak spot. The same goes for a mental disorder. There are certain disorders that you can get treatment for and you can continue your life as before, but there are certain disorders which will always be a weak spot, which you'll always have to tend some extra care to make sure that you're able to manage it correctly. Now, Joyce, about diagnosing, who is able to diagnose a mental disorder?
Well, Steph, a mental disorder can only be determined by a psychiatrist or indicated by a psychologist. It's true that children and adults often have symptoms just you mentioned, but there must be clear evidence of clinical significant and impairment, social, academic, or work-related situations.
So a psychologist, indicated by a psychologist or a psychiatrist, they can diagnose, right? And I guess they have to go through a period of assessment where the psychiatrist and psychologist see you as a patient, and define whether you have a diagnosis or not. And this is not just based on seeing you quickly, but there's a process behind it to assess whether you have a mental illness. And after that, you can get some help. You can get treatment in order to try and deal with your disorder. So, Carmencita, maybe you can tell a little bit from your own experience how that goes.
Well, you'll see a person, and then you talk, you have an interview or intake to see, and according to what the person come up with, we will, talk about it, see if it's something that happens more often in that person's family, or how long that person has been having this problem, how the person reacts when he or she is in that mood or situation. And from there we go. It's a process. It's not that person comes in and after one, approach, that what's wrong.
Right. And what I hear you saying is, it has to be going on for a period of time.
Yes.
Right? It's not that, okay, once I'm feeling low or once I had an anger outburst and I can be diagnosed with a disorder, right? There has to be significant distress. There has to be significant impairment in your life, in your daily life that is affected, that you can't do things the way you did it before, that you would be diagnosed with a disorder. And what I often hear as well is that people ask, okay, what's the reason? Where does it come from?
Well, there's often no one reason. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it could be genetic.
Okay.
Yeah, that it runs in the family. But it's also because of a traumatic situation, a loss in the family, or, something that has impacted on that person in such a way that it disrupts the person's way of thinking and feeling and acting.
So there's no one really to blame, is what we're saying, right? For a mental disorder, for getting a mental disorder, for having a mental disorder. As we said previously, some mental disorders you're born with, right? So which means you inherit them. Could be that you inherited them, that there's a genetic component that you're just more vulnerable in certain situations, or that you're more prone to developing a disorder later in life. So for example, it could be that you have an anxiety disorder, and that one of your parents was a very anxious person. It can be that certain things are passed down genetically. But what also is important to mention is that it's often also an unbalance in the brain, where the brain chemicals are unbalanced, right? There is a science to it as well. We don't only look at the behavior. There's often more reasons behind the behavior, more biological reasons behind the behavior as well, behind a person not functioning the way we expect them to function in society.
True, but still parents feel very guilty when their child is diagnosed with a disorder. And, I can understand that because I'm a mother myself. And if there is something wrong with my child, I tending to look up to myself, so it's really common that you're blaming yourself or others, maybe the dads, but still, if it's in the family, it's passed from my grandmother or something like that, or you're seeking for a situation you can blame to.
Exactly. So, Joyce, what you're saying is, even that as a parent, you're not the one to blame. There's a lot of feelings that are accompanied with having a mental disorder. For you as a parent of a child with a mental disorder, for you, the person having the mental disorder, or just being a family member of someone with a mental disorder, there's a lot of feelings and emotions that come into play as well. And we'll discuss more of those after the break.